So I'll just talk you through the agenda today. We'll start off, I'll go through a slide, we'll talk a little bit about the impact of inflation on your business. Then I'll show you in the software navigating inventory and stock levels. We'll focus on how we can drill in on those high performing inventory items and how accurate safety stock levels can help us reduce the risk on our business. So just talking about the impact of inflation on the business and what we can do to help mitigate those types of risks. The first one is going to be changes to our buying patterns. Now, if we know that one of the price increases is going to happen in the near future, what we can do today is start to look in advance and order ahead of that price increase. So start to bring in orders that we're going to order in the near future and bring them in today. We can do that via look forward, we can do it via top up, and we can also increase replenishment cycles on some of the items, particularly those low value items that aren't going to cost us a lot to stock up on. It's also important to have a tool that allows you to model different scenarios, which is very relevant when it comes to using the tool like Netstock. It gives you the ability to model different policy inputs, different scenarios when it comes to updating your MOQ or order multiple. And you may update those order multiples or MOQs for things like price break discounts that you've negotiated with the vendor. You could also update your preferred vendor in your ERP, refresh that into Netstock, and then see what that kind of impact would have on your predicted spend, as well as inventory levels if you were to use that alternative vendor as your main source of supply. Now, today, it's more relevant than ever to be able to correctly optimize the inventory. We talk about holding the optimum inventory level, so enough to support our demand, as well as protect ourselves against the risks, but not holding too much that we're holding excess stock, and being able to highlight that excess stock so we can free up some working capital and be able to invest that capital back in the products that are moving and contributing within the business. So the first step of inventory optimization is really important to classify the items appropriately. We can do this both talking about stocked, non-stocked, and obsolete items, and then of the stocked items, classifying them using the ABC and high, medium, low Paretos, which I'll go through in more detail when we look in the software. We can also think about reducing some of the replenishment cycles, particularly on those high value items. Think of our A high items or even our A low items, ones that we know are high value that we could think about reducing those replenishment cycles on. But we also need to think about what these types of decisions will have on our business, because as we start to reduce the replenishment cycle, it means more work in our warehouse, more frequent of orders, more processing, and more time spent in the warehouse dealing with all those frequencies of deliveries. It's also very important to have a tool that gives you visibility and reporting into what it means on your business in terms of your inventory levels, your predicted spend, and type of visibility that Netstock gives you when it comes to the supply performance and the projection module, which I'll show you in the software. So keeping that in mind, let's jump into the software and take a look at some of these features. So I spoke about classification and how important it was to classify your items appropriately. We can either pull some classifications out of your ERP, such as your non-stocked and your obsolete products. So non-stocked are items that we only order against customer orders, ones that are sort of indent or drop ship. We don't order them at a min-max level. We only place orders against firm customer orders if they exceed the available stock on hand. Obsolete are items that we're never ordering again. They've been discontinued, superseded, whatever the case, they never appear on the ordering plan. So we can either pull these indicators out of the ERP. The alternative is we can actually ask Netstock to classify these items for us based upon some rules that we set. So we could ask Netstock to classify those non-stocked items and decide, well, if the item hasn't sold at all in the past year, then let's make it non-stocked and free up some of that space in our warehouse that we were keeping that item in. Or if an item hasn't sold at all in the past 2 years, let's make it obsolete. Why are we even bother selling that product if it's not bringing any value to the business? It's not moving at all. Of the items that we do choose to stock, we then ask Netstock to classify those items based on 2 different Paretos. And it's important that we use the 2 different Paretos so that we have visibility on both the contribution as well as the velocity and the movement of the items. So the ABC Pareto can either be based on historical sales or future forecast. And you can also choose to weight those classifications on either cost price, selling price, or margin. And then you're more than welcome to input whatever percentages you like. So as it stands, if the item contributes to the top 80% of my turnover at cost price, it gets an A ranking, the next 16% a B, and then the bottom 4% a C. We'll then do the exact same thing, but irregardless of cost, and that gives us the velocity or the movement of the products to be in high, medium, or low. So when we classify the items, we end up with the matrix that looks like this. Across the top, we've got those A items accounting for 80% of the turnover, and down the right-hand side, those high movers accounting for 80% of the turnover, the product movement. So if we look down here in this C low category, we actually have 2.2 thousand items that are not moving and not contributing. These are the types of items that we can start to think about making non-stocked. They're not moving, they're not contributing, so why are they tying up space in the warehouse and tying up working capital? We can also choose to order larger days worth of those items, maybe even up to a year if we choose to, because it's not going to cost us a lot of money to invest in those products. We can also choose to go for some slightly lower fill rates on those products because they're not particularly relevant or important to the business. What about these C high items? So these 93 products are in the top 80% of product movement, but in the bottom 4% of turnover. So these are fast moving, inexpensive items. They're moving quickly, customers are buying them, but they're not costing us a lot and they're not bringing us much in terms of demand. So why not go for the highest possible fill rate on those products? And you can also choose to order larger days worth of stock, maybe 3 or 4 months worth. By doing so, you're essentially going to get a triple win. You're reducing the number of orders that you place, you're not inflating your inventory by much, and you're also never running out of stock, so keeping the customers happy. Well, what about the A high items? These 135 items, they're my most important products. So I probably want the highest possible fill rate for them. Well, maybe it makes sense to start with a more modest 98% because these are so high value that it would cost us more to invest to achieve the high fill rates. But the beauty of Netstock is that you can model the different scenarios, compare the different policy outcomes, and see which fill rates and which replenishment cycles make most sense for your business and your cash flow. You also may choose to order a shorter day's worth of cover for those high value items, maybe a week or two's worth. And what about the A low products? So these 76 products are in the top 80% of turnover, but in the bottom 4% of product movement. So these are our slow moving, expensive items. Maybe these are items that customers can't find elsewhere. They may be willing to wait for them. So we could target some slightly lower target fill rates for those. And we also would want to order shorter days worth of cover so that we're not over purchasing and risking any of those products becoming obsolete, as it will cost our business quite a fair bit of money because these items are so high value. So having a tool that allows us to set different inventory policies based upon how the items sit and move within the matrix dynamically is very important and powerful in today's business. But we also have the ability to override anything that went into the grid there. And this is really handy when it comes to applying policy overrides that have a start and an end date. So if you know that a vendor is increasing their prices, you can decide to create a policy override that changes the replenishment cycle. So let's say we know that the price increase is happening in a month's time. So we could say set the replenishment cycle to shorten and have that kick in a month's time. Or vice versa, you could choose to order larger days worth of cover and make sure that that policy ends just before that price increase goes up. So policy overrides are really powerful and really useful when it comes to tailoring your policy to things like events that you know will happen in the future, particular groups or vendors that you order from that you want to change things like replenishment cycles, lead times, or even target fill rates. So now let's just take a look at some of these features when it comes to looking at the individual item and how these decisions will impact your spend and also your inventory holding when it comes to changing your buying patterns and holding the optimum level of stock. So this is an item. On every single item inquiry, we have a safety stock pane. And if we click on the 3 dots on that safety stock pane, we get the safety stock curves that actually give us the visibility on how these different inputs influence the amount of safety stock days that we need to hold. So obviously the supply and the forecast risks are key inputs into that safety stock calculation. The worse the vendor delivers in terms of lateness and undersupply, and the worse that we forecast in terms of variation and under forecasting, then it will obviously increase the amount of safety stock days that we need to hold. But it's also particularly relevant for our target fill rate, replenishment cycle, and lead time days to have key influences on that safety stock day computation. So if we look at target fill rate, obviously the lower the target fill rate we'd like to achieve, the less safety stock days we need to hold to support that. The higher the target fill rate we want to achieve, the more safety stock days we'll need to hold. But what some people may not realize is that replenishment cycle actually has a very direct impact on that safety stock calculation. The shorter the replenishment cycle we'd like to replenish, the more safety stock we need to hold. And the reason why this is the case is because the less the replenishment cycle is, the more frequent your deliveries are, the more chances you're giving your vendor to deliver late or under-deliver. So you need to weigh up the different options and the different outcomes that changing replenishment cycles will have on the business in terms of reducing the overall inventory levels that you're holding for that model stock, but also thinking about the impact that it will have in terms of increasing your safety stock if you were to start to reduce that replenishment cycle. And in the exact reverse scenario, if you choose to order larger days worth of cover, you may on average be holding more inventory in terms of the model stock, but you can also see that the safety stock will start to reduce as we have less risk with those longer replenishment cycles. You can also see how lead time has a very direct impact on the safety stock. The shorter the lead times, the less safety stock we need to hold because we have less risk. Whereas the longer lead times means we have more risk as we can't respond to changes as quickly. So therefore we need to hold more safety stock. So if we're tossing up between whether we'd like to order between an overseas vendor that maybe has a smaller or a less price when it comes to cost, or when we think about ordering from a local vendor, which may have a higher cost, but would have a shorter lead time, then we can start to view what that kind of change of vendors would have in terms of our stock holding, as well as the safety stock that we're using to support that risk across those two different vendors. So now we'll just take a look at a product which we've updated the MOQ to be 1,000 and the order multiple to be 1,000. So these could be one of those items which we've negotiated with the vendor to give us a good price break discount when we order in the thousands. So each increment of ordering should be up to the next 1,000. And you can see that we did actually set a policy of 90 days. So it fell under the C high category, and all the C high items we're choosing to order 3 months worth of stock. But for this item, because we've imposed that MOQ and order multiple of 1,000, Netstock has automatically catered for this and told us our effective replenishment cycle is now 245 days. So because we've got that MOQ, we're now effectively ordering 245 days worth of stock every time we place the order. And you can see here that we have a model stock level of that replenishment cycle to be 850 units. So on average, we'll be holding 850 units of this item due to that MOQ. But if we scroll down and take a look at the projection of that product, we actually still get visibility on that 3-month replenishment cycle, that ideal inventory band. And you can see there that once we reach the lead time, if we take a look at that model level, it's 535. So you can see there that by updating the MOQ of this product, we've increased that model level by about 320 units. So on average, we'll be holding more stock, but we can also see that in case we can order less frequently, and we'll be getting a better cost benefit from the vendor. And you also see how that MOQ has impacted the ordering. We've got 2 big, large orders that are satisfying us for the 245-day replenishment cycle. Now we'll just take a look at one of those C low items, one of the products that we may choose to order a year or so's worth of stock. Now, when we start to think about ordering a year's worth of stock for products, it may be relevant for us to start thinking about the extended planning horizon. So the extended planning horizon gives you a full 24-month view into the future when it comes to forecasts, ordering, projections, spend, all the information that you get in the standard software, which you usually just see the 12 months for. So you can see there why it may be particularly relevant that we think about that module, as once we add the lead time, which is 90 days, plus the safety stock of 2 days, which gives us the reorder point of 92 days. So each time it triggers the order. But we add that replenishment cycle, a year's worth of stock on top, and you can quickly see that we're ordering up to 457 days. So you can see there that we need that extended planning horizon module to accurately calculate that order up to value, as it's clearly extended that 12-month horizon. So if we scroll down, we can see that projection for the product, how we'll be replenishing and ordering the product according to that year's worth of supply. And you can also see if we click on that order pop-up, those 2 big, large orders that are satisfying us for the full year ahead. And as this is one of our C-low items, we're only ordering 80 units at a time to satisfy us for the whole year. So that's why we may look at ordering a year or close to a year's worth of stock of some of those C-low items, because we're not holding too much in the warehouse. And it's also reducing the amount of work and processing on our warehouse. When we look at ordering, there are a few different ways that we can maximize our order today if we know that our vendor's price is going to increase in the near future. So one of these strategies is to be able to use the look forward days to simulate into the future and bring in orders that you are going to place into the order today. So if you order monthly, you may have set your look forward days up to be 25 or 30. So if we change the look forward days to say 60, we're bringing in everything that we'd ordered this month as well as next month into our order today. And you'll see how increasing that look forward days will then start to increase the product count and will therefore increase the quantity, the value. And if we had metrics like volume and weight set up, then we'd also see how those would increase. We just haven't had them set up in this demo instance yet. So if you know that you've got a particular budget or cash spend for this vendor for this order, you can use the look forward days to bring up that order until you meet that value. The other option, besides using the look forward days to simulate into the future and bring in future orders, is to be able to create that order and then use the top up function in that order. So when we order, it brings up all the products that have dropped below their reorder point within that look forward period. But we also have a list of products that are below the maximum, but not yet necessarily at their reorder points. So we click on that top up item list and we get a list of all those products, ones that we can top back up to their maximum. So you could simply select the list, add all the items, and you'll see what our order value will now increase to once we top all those products back up to the maximum. You could also have a cost target that you'd like to meet for that vendor in terms of spend. So you could input that cost, hit solve, and then Netstock will automatically add the next best items to help you meet that cost constraint based upon how the items will be selling into the future. So there are a few different ways that you can interact with the products. You can also decide to move products to alternative vendors. If you see that an item has a high MOQ and you decide that you wouldn't want to order that product from the vendor, maybe you'd like to order it from an alternative supplier that doesn't have a high MOQ, on the ordering screen, you always have the ability to move products to alternative vendors when you're creating the recommended order. So you simply click on the move line to another recommended order, and then you can select from your alternative vendors and move that product to one of their other purchase orders if you can understand that it makes more sense for the business, as I've said, if you've got a high MOQ or order multiple that you don't necessarily want to adhere to. So when it comes to reporting and visibility on your expected spend with the vendor, it's important to see that all the information that we need is included in that supplier performance module. In these modules, you get a summary view on your vendors and how they're delivering in the warehouse. You can see here for this apparel supplier co-vendor, they deliver to our ABC warehouse. They supply us 92 items. You can see how much inventory we hold of those products in the warehouse, how much of that stock is purely there as safety stock, on average, how many days of safety stock we hold for the vendor, the average % of deviation that the vendor is from their stated lead times, the average offset days that we're adding to that lead time to cater for their late deliveries, the average lead time of the vendor, what we've purchased from them previously, what we've got from them that's overdue, what we've placed on order from them that's still on the way, as well as what we are going to recommend you order from that vendor. So if we click on the Future Purchase Orders tab, we can then see a summary of all of our future purchasing. We can view it by each individual order, or we can view it as a summary by month. And once we click on the summary by month, we then get what is essentially a purchasing forecast into the future. We can see what our predicted purchasing in terms of units will be for each of those vendors and each product that we source from that vendor. And you can also see that it gives us a summary total for the next year ahead. If we had the extended planning horizon module, it would give us this exact same report, our future purchasing for the full 24-month period. So these types of purchasing forecasts are really powerful to be able to download and take with you when you go and negotiate those price break discounts with the vendor in those meetings that you have. The projection module is especially powerful when it comes to looking at your predicted inventory levels, spend, receipting, fill rates, demand, all the type of key KPIs that you want to measure and think about when you talk about ordering from your supplier. So here you can see in the projections, you're able to filter by a particular vendor. You can drill down just for a particular warehouse or region, or even just a particular product group that you're ordering from them. So I've filtered by our apparel supplier co-vendor and run the projection for all the products that we're ordering from them. You can clearly see how the inventory that we're holding of their items is going to track over the next 12 months. Again, if we had that extended planning horizon module, we would see all these same projections for the full 24-month period. You can see how the fill rate will improve on the products that you're sourcing from the vendor. You can also see how the stock turns will start to improve on those items. You can see what the expected demand will be across the products, what Netstock will start recommending that you order from the vendor, and what you've got coming into the warehouse in terms of your firm receipts, orders that are already on the way, and the projected receipts, the recommended orders that we will tell you to place. So you can, of course, start to drill down and take a look at all the expected replenishment when it comes to ordering from the vendor. So you get that view in terms of your predicted spend with the vendor, in terms of dollars, what you'll be ordering from them. You can also see what we project that you'll be receipting into the warehouse on top of what you've already got on order, as well as what you've already placed on order and what we expect you'll be receiving in the warehouse in the near future based upon those incoming firm purchase orders. So you get that visibility by supplier at the summary level, but of course you can download these projections and get all of this exact same information, but down on the individual SKU level. So you can see by item, by supplier, how much you'll be spending in terms of recommended orders, how much will be receipted into the warehouse, what your average inventory stock will look like. If you've got any excess stock, will be highlighted. So you can start to drill down on any of these different categories and get even more detail in terms of what your inventory and spending will be looking like according to the policies and the inputs that you've just configured for your business. So just coming back to the slides and just reiterating what we've covered here. So one approach to reducing the impacts of inflation on the business is thinking about inventory minimization and optimization. So we can start to optimize inventory, hold the appropriate amount of stock to be able to support our customers' demand, but also keeping a buffer there, a dynamic buffer, which is protecting ourselves against the risk of stocking out when it comes to forecast risk as well as supply risk. So it's important that we first of all classify our inventory appropriately, making items stocked, non-stocked, obsolete, and then letting Netstock classify our stocked items by ABC, high, medium, low, so that we can apply the appropriate policies. It's important that we have a tool that's constantly and dynamically measuring the risks across those items so that we can hold appropriate safety stock for them to protect ourselves against those risks. We also can think about reducing the replenishment cycle on some of the items, especially those high value items. We also need to think about what these types of decisions will have on the business in terms of increasing the order frequency and meaning more orders and processing for our warehouse. It also means we're holding a lower stock model, a lower model stock level on average, but it also means that we have higher risk now due to the frequency in orders, and therefore we need to hold a little bit more safety stock to protect ourselves against that higher risk. On the flip side, we can start to order more or order in ahead, or choose to take advantage of those price break discounts by using the MOQs. So the way we can do it when it comes to ordering is using the look forward days to simulate into the future, bring in orders that we were going to place in the future into the order today before that price increases. We can top up the orders that we're placing today to make sure we're topping up items that are below their maximum, back up to the maximum, but are not yet due for reordering yet. And we can also start to increase the replenishment cycle, especially for those lower value items, such as the C low and the C high items that we'd want to stock up maybe a year or maybe 4 to 5 months worth of stock of those products. So when we increase the replenishment cycle, we know that that will start to increase the model stock, the average stock that we're holding for those products. But it also means that we have less risk now because we're reducing the order frequency, and therefore Netstock will start to lower the safety stock for those products. The other approach is that we can start to update the MOQs or order multiples to ensure that we're getting the best price break discounts from our vendors for those products.